audible feedback. Alright, we're good?
Yeah.
Alright. Hi there, folks. And today we are doing the rune Raido. And this one actually looks almost exactly like a capital letter R. So it's really easy to figure out what its English correspondence is. Alright, so some of the meanings of Raido are to ride. It can be, usually represents the horse that you're riding, or it can also mean the cart that a horse is drawing. Some of the poems that go along with this, from the one from the Old English rune poem, is riding in the hall for every man is easy, and very hard for him who sits upon a powerful horse over miles of road. This basically means that when you're talking about a journey, it's really easy to remember it as being really easy. But when you're actually on it, it's a pain. Then for the Icelandic rune poem, we have riding is sitting joyful, and a speedy trip, and the horse's toil. So again, we have the horse in the poem, talking about the horse doing all the work. And then for the last person, for the last poem, we have the Old Norse poem, and it says, "Riding, they say, is for horses worse. Regin hammered out the best sword." And again, like we talked about last week, the Old Norse poem has a tendency to describe the nature of the rune and then have kind of a story. So it's a riddle and a story instead of, with the Old Icelandic, it's just riddle. So with this one, the story is kind of lost on us. We do know that Regin was a dwarf who made a sword for Sigurd's father, and that sword was broken, and Sigurd's father died, and then Regin actually raised Sigurd and reforged his father's sword and gave it to him, and this sword could actually cut through an anvil in its entirety, so he did create the sharpest sword. What this has to do with Raido, I am a little in the dark about. So if any of you know anything about that, please feel free to let me know. Alright, so we've got, as you can see from the poems, we've got the idea that this is mostly horse related. So it's usually one person riding on a horse. So this has the idea, what?
We seem to have stopped.
Stopped where? Stopped where?
It started again.
Yeah, it'll do that. As long as this is perfect streaming here, we're fine.
Sorry.
And so you can just ignore it, other than that. Alright. So, with this idea of Raido being the ride rune, you have horse transportation. So that would be one person riding a horse. And so this also gets this idea of your personal path in life. So it'll talk about the road you're going on, the journey that you're going on. And the idea that it's harder for the horse means that, metaphorically, it's harder for your physical body than it is for your spirit. Because there's two different kinds of journeys you can go on. There is a physical one, which this rune actually very often in a rune cast will indicate travel. But it can also be a spiritual journey, so this is also the rune of astral travel, as well as shamanic journeys. So it talks a lot about, there's a part of your soul which you use for the shape-shifting abilities in Norse mythology. And many people would have that particular part of their soul as a horse, because it would be an animal that you would shapeshift into. And so many people would have that as a horse so that they could go places, or they would ride upon it as a horse. The other side of that is you could also be riding a cart. Now, this has something to do with the idea of who's in that cart. It could either be a god or goddess, and so that would be kind of a passive way of getting messages. This rune does have a lot to do with the previous one that we talked about, answer. They're very similar in that way. So it could be passively receiving messages from gods, or it could be your fellow man in the cart. So it could just be a whole group of people. So it could also relate to organized activity with human beings. Also with this idea of the cart, we have a wheel. And some people argue that that's a mistranslation and a misunderstanding. But it actually makes a lot of sense, because this rune also has this idea of rhythmic action. The movement of the horse is a rhythmic action. Walking down a path is a rhythmic action. In our lives, if we think about it as our personal journey, the rhythm of that is a year. Not to be confused with the idea of Jera, which is a rune that we'll get to later, and the idea of the seasons. This is just an idea, this would be more like the rhythm of keeping time. So it would not just be the seasons and what each of them does, but just the idea that they repeat themselves. That also has to do with time, that every day has the same 24 hours that just keep going along. So with this, with the idea of this rhythm and this movement, also comes the idea that this is a rune of dance, performance, song, theater, music. It's the rune of communicating with your body. As you can see, I'm doing a very poor job of communicating with my words today. This is the rune that picks up where answer leaves off. Whatever cannot be communicated with words is communicated with action. And so a catchphrase for this rune would be, actions speak louder than words. With answer, we have the mouth and the telling of the stories. And with Raido, we have the living of the stories. These are actually carrying out the actions that we talk about carrying out. So it's kind of like the put up or shut up rune. With that idea that actions speak louder than words, it also has to do with personal responsibility. Knowing how your actions affect those around you, and doing actions correctly in order so that everybody benefits. That also goes back to that idea of everybody being in the cart, everybody together. So we're all on the same journey, and we need to make sure that we help each other out. I should have just had an interpretive dance for Raido. That probably would have worked out better than this garbled mess. Alright, so if you could understand that, that is the meaning of the rune. Let's talk about some of the associations. If you guys want to say anything, feel free to type it up in the forums, and we'll have the guy working our forum, wow, words really don't want to happen today. We'll have the gentleman working our boards, just read them right off to me. The deities associated with Raido are the Norns, and they were the ones that would weave the strings of fate for people, so that goes back to that idea of personal responsibility and your path in life, as well as the interconnectedness of these, because the Norns also, by weaving these, by creating these threads, also decided how people would interact with each other. The polarity of it is male. It's a distinctly masculine rune. For healing, you have the legs. It helps heal the legs and the glute muscles. So these would be our powerful movers, the ones we use to walk around and really do our journeying, which makes sense. So this would be a great rune to wear if you're going on a long run, any kind of travel or journey, or maybe if you're doing one of those walks for hunger or relays for life or anything like that, this would be a good one to wear for that. Its color is bright red for courage, increased energy levels, confidence, joy, and goals, which goes along with, yeah?
Crystal Rain asks about asking for help from the divine in reference to justice.
In reference to justice, that would go along with more of Jera. As well, and if you want to ask the god specifically, I would combine that with the rune answer. So, could I have a regular colored pen? And we don't have any paper anywhere, do we? Okay. So, to do that, I'm not going to draw it in red because red is the power color. Alright, I would use this bind rune. Can you guys see that? And this is 2 answers. Specifically, they're kind of Frisian, but they also form the Jeras. And I would use something like that if you're looking to get divine justice. Not so much Raido. Raido's a lot more passive. And less justice. But we will get to Jera later. Jera is not just harvest, but it's also justice. J for justice. Alright, so where were we? Does that make sense? Are they good? Awesome. Alright, so the other associations with Raido are the number 5. Which has to do with traveling. The astrological correspondence is Sagittarius, which again has this adventure to it. They're very independent and they love freedom. Lucky, enthusiastic. The tarot card associated with this rune is the Wheel of Fortune. I've also heard it suggested that the Hierophant would be with this, but I'm so-so on that association. I don't really get it. I really don't think the Wheel of Fortune fits it that well either, but that's just me. The element that goes along with Raido is air. It's an air. The planet is Mercury, so that's another association that it does have with answer. It is similar in that kind of way. The tree associated with Raido is the oak. It's actually a big magical protection tree. And it does help a lot with illness. I don't really get why it's used with this whole journey idea. It doesn't really talk about any of that. I mean, it does say that witches were once thought to dance beneath this tree, so I guess it would go with that. It does have a lot of magical associations, but as far as with Raido, I don't really get the connection there. The plants that are associated with it, I get a lot more. the two that I've heard are snapdragon and mugwort. Mugwort makes a lot of sense to me. Because if you place mugwort in your shoes, it'll give you strength during long walks. It also can be used to help with prophetic dreaming, to help with astral travel, so it goes both with the physical and the spiritual idea of this journeying. But actually you can also carry it to prevent madness, which is kind of cool. Lots of different ways that you can use mugwort to help with scrying. There's also snapdragon, which again has a lot to do with protection. But there's one interesting thing that I like to share about snapdragon is if you put snapdragon onto a mirror on your altar, it'll send a curse or hex back to the person who sent a curse or hex to you. Doesn't really have a lot to do with Raido, but there you go. For stones, there is chrysoprase, which is this really nice dark green stone, and that's used as a cure for restlessness. So I guess chrysoprase is kind of like the anti-Raido, or the cure for Raido. And that's it for associations. Do you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns about Raido, or if not, we're all set?
There's no interpretive dance?
No. I think it would have been better if this entire episode was just interpretive dance and drumming, because that would have actually been really in the spirit of Raido. We could have gotten a horse in too, but not helping. Alright, but yeah, Raido. So that's the end of this week. Next week we're doing... Oh, I never showed you guys my pictures. I'm awful today. This is my collage for Raido. As you can see, it's got horses and traveling, chess, which has to do with the logic of, and the wheel of the year with horses, lots of horses, travel, time with the gears here. You got music, you got dance, which I would have been better off doing tonight. You've got the seasons, the wheel of the year, also the wheel of your life, the idea of the cycle of the human life. And then you've got dancing and prophetic dreams and all kinds of shamany stuff down here too. So pretty much, if you can't say it, Raido it. Next week is Canaz, and that one is the Rune of the Torch. So we'll talk more about that next week. Just a reminder, if you have one of these iPad doodads, you can watch these live study groups on the iPad. Just download the live stream app, and you can watch us from your mobile device. So don't forget to like this video if you want to keep watching Rune study groups, and come and join us down here. See you next week. You can turn it off now. Is it off? Do I need to come over there and help?